Hello and welcome back to Broll Redux. And this is your host, David Square. How's it going, David?
Hey Dave, how are you? Happy New
I'm
Year.
doing good.
We're still in January, right? Yeah, still in January.
Yeah, it's still January. Time has not been going that fast this year so far.
Well, still
2025 has been
good.
kind of slow. All right, so
This,
we got a good movie today.
right?
It's an odd one, and probably most people have not seen it, but they may have heard about it.
Right.
It's called Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Right. It was a
And
fun movie to watch.
it sounds like it would be a horror film, and it's got horror aspects in it, but it is a comedy, you know.
Right.
And this is actually the first time you've actually seen this movie, correct?
Yes, the first time, yeah, we did a family in the family. We all sat down and watched it, even the dog and the cat. The cat was still here. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I enjoyed it. It was
What
it
was
was,
it?
it
What
was
you were expecting?
no, it was. I thought it was. I knew nothing about it. Based on the poster, it's going to be gory, but it turned out to be pretty funny. It was we had a good time watching it.
Well, it stars Tyler Labine and the great Alan Tudyk. Tudyk.
Turd again.
You know, and if you don't know who Alan Tudyk is, you probably have heard his voice on various things. He does a lot of voice acting.
Like yeah, a lot of voice.
He was in the film Serenity. You know, he did the robot voice in Rogue One, I believe. He has a show on Sci-Fi Channel called Alien Residence. I mean, he's been around.
He's
You
been
know, it's
around.
one of those people. It's like I don't remember his name, but if you see him, he's like, oh, that guy.
Yeah, he looks like he's born in Texas too, El Paso.
We got a lot of good
Born in El
actors that
Paso,
come out
Texas.
of Texas. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a good place.
yeah, good in the middle. We can go either way. We can hit that way, East Coast, hit the West Coast, wherever you want to go. Well, it's a great movie. The box office numbers don't show it, and there's a reason for that. You know, it only cost $5 million to make,
Right,
which for what it had, that's cheap. You know, of course, the actors probably were working for scale. Everyone was doing, you know, either favors or for scale.
right,
Um, it didn't have basically a theatrical release. It had a very, very limited theatrical release. It only
right.
opened in 31 theaters. And then at its peak, it only was in 44 theaters. And this is worldwide.
Hmm.
And the only reason to do that is to actually be able to get reviewed by a lot of these publications and various things, especially in other parts of the world. You know, it's kind of got that kind of like, you know, the Oscar kind of restrictions where it's like all these other awards things is if you want to be considered for these awards or to be reviewed, you must have a theatrical release. They're not
Right,
just going to review a straight to DVD release. So that's a reason why it didn't really have a theatrical release, but it did make 5.2 million at the theaters in the box office.
yeah, yeah. It says. Yeah, I'm looking at IMDb right now.
Yeah, so it still made, you know, portion of the money. Of course, the box office money, you know, the actual movie and producers only probably see maybe half that number because, you
Mhm.
know, half that goes to the actual theaters and stuff. So it's not like it made its money back in that small limited release, but uh, I couldn't find the DVD sales. It's still hard to find those type of numbers, but I'm sure, you know, by now, since this was back in 2010, you know, 15 years later, and it had a resurgence maybe 5 years ago, you know, especially when, you know, COVID came on, that people were looking for
Like
things
people
to
looking for something to
watch.
watch.
This is one of those things where it's like if you know someone who's actually seen a lot of movies, they're going, have you ever seen this movie? Check it out then.
Mhm.
So I'm sure it's made its money back. Was it a huge success? No. People have been
No,
clamoring about, hey, is there going to be a sequel? Everyone's at the point where it's like, if it had a good script, sure. I know there was a script written before, and the two actors, Labine and Tudyk, said no because the script really wasn't that great. You know, it was just
right,
a money grab. It's like, okay, let's you know profit from the popularity that arised. You know, and the movie doesn't really
right,
need a sequel. It ends its story pretty well. It does what it needs to do. The characters have grown. The characters have overcome their uh insecurities and other things, and There's nothing
You
more
know,
to
yeah, again,
explore.
yeah, we talked about some other films. Yeah, where like Tingy Mutant the Turtles. Where are you going to go with it? They've done you've been there, done that, so to speak, right?
Yeah. And that's
Ross,
always
you
the,
can
I
say,
think, the best way to go when you're making a film. Don't write it to expecting that there's going to be multiple films, unless there's agreement saying that, hey, yeah, we're going to make it three films.
right,
Have that first film wrap up a story completely.
right,
Have the characters grow, have them get to a great place, and then you can always write something else afterwards. Even Rocky,
mhm,
we talked about Rocky, the first Rocky before that movie wrapped up. You know,
with full
there's
circle.
not going to be a rematch. I don't want one. He didn't want a rematch. He did what he came to do. He accomplished what he wanted to do, and that was the end of his story arc, if you wanted to.
Mhm.
And then since it was successful, now you write something else that can go
Right,
on. You can always write something else.
right,
Even when someone grows and goes through a story, you can have some kind of adversity come in and have them face that, you know.
mhm,
And it's so much easier and it's so much more therapeutic to the audience because they want that finality in something. They yeah, you always want to leave them wanting more, but you don't want to leave them with too many questions or something unfulfilled. You want to leave them fulfilled, then wanting
mhm,
more, right? You
right,
want them
right,
to be
right,
gluttons, right? You want them to be full,
yeah,
but still want more, right?
right, yeah. What else does this guy have to offer, right? A new, yeah, new storyline.
And the great thing about this movie was how it played with perspectives.
Hmm.
That's how it was all about perspective. These two guys, we don't really know what they did in the real
Right,
world, let's put it that
right,
way.
right,
But they seem to be like blue collar workers, and they put in all their money to buy a vacation home.
right,
And it's a a dilapidated cabin in the woods, they
right,
were going to
right,
do it for fishing, and this
right.
cabin was basically
A
modeled
tinderbox on it.
after the
Yeah,
cabin from Evil, you know, what was that movie? From Sam Raimi, Evil
okay,
Dead, and Wrong Turn. So yeah, it looks like a very typical horror style cabin that's in the
right.
woods, and all they see is the potential. And as soon as you open the
Yeah,
door,
very, very optimistic, right?
yeah, yeah, you open up the door, and it's like, yeah, as the audience, you see, it's like, man, this is a pile of garbage.
It's a tinderbox. It's a tinderbox, right? It
Yeah,
just
beams breaking when they're rocking on there. They go to the wall, and it's got all these like murder clippings, and then all of a sudden there's a free hot dog for free chili coney dog, and they don't see
right.
none of the murder clippings. It's like, oh, come on, never expires.
Yeah, they're very optimistic. Very optimistic.
Very optimistic, blinded to any negativity. And the thing is, the story and the director, it could have been just a wink to the camera where they're just buffoons, right? They're just two stupid guys. But these characters are actually well grounded. Like I said, they're optimistic, but they don't know what's going on because a lot of crazy stuff's going on to them, happening to them, but they never feel like it's that just slapstick comedy.
No, no, they're because they're very good. They were just like just two good old guys and just doing what they needed to do, and they just got thrown in the middle of the situation with these college students. It was just, and yeah, the college students, I think, were more of the buffoons than anybody. Just like, what the heck? But they
Yeah,
had all these,
I would say you're right. Yeah, the college students were basically the stereotypical college students,
right, right,
and the two leads, that are supposed to be the killers, the hillbilly killers,
right,
are not, and this comes from the director and writer Eli Craig's, experience. Like as a kid, he would go to a cabin with his father and do fishing and stuff like that. And he was into like the horror films, and he saw these horror films with all these hillbillies and like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have
right,
Eyes. And it's like, how can I subvert expectations with films like that? And it's like, well, let's make these killers not really killers, and but make the situations basically the same. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
just play with those stereotypes,
Yeah,
play
those
with those
tropes. Yeah,
tropes,
right. Yeah, horror tropes. Right.
there's things that you see that are coming, and when they carry a wood chipper and he's, using a wood chipper, it's like, man, yeah, if you've ever
Right.
seen a movie before, you probably know what's going to happen. Someone's going to go with that wood chipper, right?
Right. And
Um,
that kid, then they try to get. Oh, it was hilarious. Because the
well,
movie, if the trailer you shared with me, was like, oh, this is going to be, but you don't have any idea till you watch the movie that it just is all ridiculous. You know.
yeah, don't expect, a bunch of jokes, right?
No,
It's not
no, no.
about one-liners, it's
It's,
not about jokes, it's about situational and perspective humor. And
yeah.
I don't know if it's true. I have to pull out the DVD, and I don't know if it's the DVD that's got special features on, but I've heard that the DVD with special features has a play mode where you can actually watch the film through the college kid's perspective.
Oh, really interesting.
So it turns out to be more of a slasher film.
Oh, really interesting.
Because you don't get to see, the main characters, point of view and what they're saying. You only see what
Right.
the college
With
kids are
the
seeing.
college kids, that's
They take
interesting,
it so
right?
serious.
Because
The college
they're
kids
pretty,
are like scared out of their wits, and they have no idea what's going on, right?
and they're causing all the problems. They're the ones causing all the problems. There's always that, the good looking guy, the college student. It's always a dimwit. He thinks he's the smartest one of the bunch, but he's the one that's causing all the problems. And then obligatory blonde and your whole group of you know.
Yeah, the
I grew up
stoner,
watching
the
Martin Luther King. Right,
drinker. Let's go skinny dipping in the lake.
right. And the skinny
That
black
kind of
kid, he goes,
thing.
"I'm not going there." They're like the first ones to die. I'm staying back. All those horror tropes. It was a good. It was fun.
Yeah, and just the way that they used perspective was great, and I always enjoyed it, and how we can misinterpret lines in different ways.
Right,
They go skinny dipping. One of the college kids, sees, the guy's fishing, on the river, and she slips
right,
and goes in the water. It's like, oh, she hasn't come up. Let's go get her. They pull
right,
her up, and they're just, worried about her safety. And he's like, oh, the kids are over there. He's all screaming. He's like, we got your friend.
right.
I always found that funny. We got your friend, and that turns out to be like a line that everyone was using. It's like, okay, we got, they college kids took one of the hillbillies. It's like, let's write them a note. It's like, we got your friend. How it means so many different things. It's like, hey, you just wanted to let them know. It's like, hey, we got your friend safe.
It was.
And it was just so great. The actors did such a great job, like I said, not taking it too buffoonery,
Mhm.
it had that very good feeling of like Laurel and Hardy kind of connection between them.
Right, 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 right. And they just happen to find themselves in these situations, and they're just not even realizing what situation they're in. They're just kind of oblivious because they don't think that. They're not thinking that way.
Yeah, yeah, they think a bunch of college kids have a suicide pact, out here. It's like they have no idea what's going on. All they know is all these kids just started dying.
Right,
The kids try to attack them. They don't see getting attacked. All they see is the aftermath of the attack going wrong, jumping through the
right,
wood chipper. And he's trying his
right,
best to save them. It's like,
right,
then it goes on that little too long. It's like, yeah, there's no saving that guy in the wood chipper, but he's still trying, right?
right.
Then you're trying
And
to
digging
figure out, it's
holes.
like, how do we explain this to the cops? Let's just call the cops. It's like,
Right.
hey, what does this look like? It's like, how do you
Hmm.
explain that to the cops? It's like,
Right,
even if you do and you're truthful, it's like, yeah, that no one in the world would believe.
right. Believe that, right? Hmm.
Yeah, such a great movie, such a great movie.
I was
And
looking.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was looking here on IMDb. There's a Korean sequel. They made a Handsome Guys. a
Yeah, I'm
Korean
not sure
movie.
if it was a sequel or if it's kind of like
Well, not
a
sequel,
remake or just
a
a
remake. Yeah, a
tribute to
remake.
it, which was I find that kind of like funny because usually it's the other way around, especially lately. South Korea has been making some really good content like Squid Games and some other things, and we usually
Right,
make it after. Even China, with Infernal Affairs and stuff like that. Eventually someone makes a remake. Someone in the States, some producer or studio buys the rights and they'll make an English version of it.
right.
But this time
Yeah,
it
I
was
have
the
to
other
watch
way
this.
around.
Right. Yeah, it's called The Handsome Guys, 2024. So it's fairly new.
Yeah, fairly new. I'm gonna have to check it out. I don't know if it's
Right.
streaming anywhere,
But
but
to find it, it looks
it,
pretty funny. Reading the plot, it sounds just like the same thing. They just move in, they just happenstance all this bad stuff's happening around them.
and that's the
Yeah,
way to actually subvert expectations. We hear that a lot, subvert expectations. Rain Johnson in Star Wars Last Jedi, he wanted to subvert expectations, but he he did it by just wanting to make people mad.
right.
This guy, he did it creatively. He played with the tropes that were there and he flipped them around, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
all you have to do is flip the coin to the other side and you get something
Right,
completely
right,
different.
right. Yeah,
And it
I'd
was
like to
very
see that.
collaborative. The hat, giver, that the guy was wearing. It's kind of like the Canadian version of Get It Done.
Right. Yeah, what did it say? I forgot.
Give-er. So
Oh,
Giv
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I was wondering, yeah, what the hell is that?
apostrophe er.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, GIV, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the redneck slang for Canadians, I guess.
Get it done, right?
And a lot of like the high pass comedy, especially during the interactions between the main actors and the college kids, were improvised. And a lot of times you have to do, because you're in that height of the moment, you're running or you've just done some running and you have to be aspirated, and it's like
Right,
you just got to say something natural. And when
right,
you're
right.
writing something like that, you tend to get something pointed, like you plan to say this.
And it kind of falls flat. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like in that moment, right? It
Mhm.
sounds like something that's been planned. And
Mhm.
sometimes you need that off the cuff,
Right.
in the moment. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, yeah. Just let the camera run and just see, yeah, see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you're not going to hear a lot of just jokes and one-liners, and situational humor goes through at least half or 75% of the movie. And then like the last half of the movie is kind of like that action comedy kind of you gotta finish off the story of this horror slasher film.
Oh,
So
yeah, it definitely has to come to an end. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely come to an end.
So you kind of get the final face off, and at the end where it's like, yeah, they kind of lose that kind of charm that the rest of the movie had,
Mhm.
because you're done with subverting expectations. Now you just have to wrap up the straight story, right?
Right,
Where good overcomes evil, main character overcomes his foibles, and this is 15 years ago, so the good guy gets the girl, right?
right.
um it was it's just so funny, all the perspective, and you can see how it could, and I really want to see that DVD, that other version, even though it probably is not as good as just a straight faster film.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see that, right?
But you
In the
definitely
different
see the
perspective.
moments where it's like, yeah, if I didn't know what's going on and I'm looking through the college kid's eyes, I would see what they're seeing. That
Hmm.
he's digging a hole for the latrine, and the college
Right,
girl that's still recuperating, she tells you she grew up on a farm. She's done this before. She wants to help dig.
right, right, right,
Until her friends come around, and her friends just see her digging
right.
and
Digging her own
him
grave.
commenting on it. It's like, oh man, they're making her dig her own grave.
It's like,
It's just you see that you see how that it could be misstrued, and they do such a great job at letting the audience know and feel what these main characters are going through, right? And kind of
Right.
disconnecting us from what we usually know stereotypically and prototypically as, the college kids, the
Mhm.
survival. They're the ones that are they are fighting for survival. They are dying off, not by
Right.
hillbillies, but
It's with their
they
own
still
hands. Yeah.
blame the hillbillies, right?
Right. 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 Yeah.
So they are fighting for survival in some sort, but it isn't the stereotypical way that normally
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
So let's take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll finish up our discussion of this film.
Okay.
All right, and we are back with
We
B-roll
are back.
Redux, talking about Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Definitely a sleeper. It's definitely a sleeper for
Oh
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of when I was working at Hollywood Video, this was one of the movies that I would recommend to people that
Really.
don't know, looking at the what's new, nothing new has come out. They've seen everything. Do they like horror comedy movies, of any type?
Yeah.
This would be one. Another one would be like Layer Cake, when we talked about that Teenage Mutant
Oh
Ninja
yeah. Yeah.
Turtles. It's like, yeah, these are kind of like sleeper hits where it's like they didn't really have, besides Turtles, Layer Cake and this movie didn't really have theatrical releases, you know,
Right.
in the States. So that means they didn't really have a marketing, they didn't really have anybody going out there. It wasn't really widespread. There wasn't a whole bunch of commercials about it. So when the movie came out, the Hollywood and Blockbuster would only probably have one or two copies, right? And
Mhm.
it's probably on the main new release wall, but when there's only like, one or two copies of the actual disc, it probably only has one display and it's hidden there, So if you're not looking, it's stuck in between two or three different movies, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, you probably just skip over it because you didn't know that was like a different movie,
Right.
and that's a shame. And it's the reason why the type of movies, the reason why it didn't really get picked up for distribution, really quickly and things like that, because it's not quite a horror and it's not quite a comedy.
Mhm. Right. Right.
It doesn't pick a lane, right? It wants to be a mixed match between those, and it does work. But usually, if it's coming from someone who's got a reputation already.
Right.
Take a look at like what Cabin in the Woods. What was directed and produced by like Josh Whedon. And that Josh Whedon's not a name like he used to be because he got in some trouble. But at that time when that film came out, he was a big name. Marvel, Avengers, the first movie he made Disney, a lot of money, right?
Mhm.
So he had a big name, he had clout. When that movie came out, it was allowed to be that kind of mix between a horror and comedy.
Mhm.
And that movie also really wasn't as subverting expectations as this. It was more along the lines of a horror film, but we were able to laugh because we were kind of like the villains in that movie where we were actually watching these teenagers just going through there.
Right.
And this one is like more of like, hey, you got to get down to that perspective. It's all about like, these innocence of these characters, and can you put yourself in the eyes of two different perspectives in this film? And if
Mhm.
you're able to do that, if you're able to put yourself in the eyes of the teenagers and put yourself in the eyes of the hillbillies, you're going to see the possibilities of two different films,
Yeah.
which makes it unique, and that's why like we were discussing before, it's like, yeah, you probably can't get a sequel out of this.
Mhm.
It's going to be so hard to actually replicate the charm and the certain perspectives that you get, you know. And for being a horror film, and we talked about Roger Ebert before, that he actually gave this movie a good review,
Mhm.
and he's notorious for not liking
Right.
any horror films.
He's the harder of the bunch. Yeah. So
Yes.
I was reading the
Yep.
credits. I mean the cast, and one of the Allison is the she plays on one of my favorite shows, 30 Rock. She plays Cherie, the
Really?
dimwitted. Yeah, she's the blonde on 30 Rock.
That is her.
Yeah,
Now that you mentioned, it's like I haven't seen 30 Rock in quite some
yeah. Now
time.
it's like 30 Rock. Oh, that's Cherie. Yeah,
Yeah, she was one of the assistants for somebody,
yeah.
right?
Always wearing shorts and a halter top to work, and the
Yeah.
guys are always drooling over her. Real dimwit, always falling into, you know, yeah. It was that. That's like
Yeah,
because
now that
she
you
looks like
mention it, it's like I have that picture in my head. It's like that is her. It's like I know I've seen a couple of like the the actors before, and it's like I've seen that that actress in this movie or this TV show. I've seen this guy in there. And she always looked familiar, but it was hard to put her down because she didn't have her hair out most of the time, right? It's
right,
usually quick snaps of her and back, or she's from the side, and then she has the bandage on her head,
right,
because
right,
she's
right,
not getting hit in the head,
right.
which has to
Yeah,
happen because at certain points, if she was able to speak to a majority of her friends,
right,
things would have like come to a conclusion.
right, right. Yeah, quick. Yeah, but she was out. Yeah, I like. Let's talk about the cabin. I mean, it was a great use of
So you think they
setting.
built that cabin, or did
Oh
they
yeah, it had to.
find something that's
Well, they
was
probably had
out
an
there and
idea.
they just paid someone to use it?
I think they had to build it. It was too bad. It was too creepy. I mean, the floors. I've been in old cabins like that, and the floors wouldn't support some of the things that were going on in there. It was really good. The production value was in the cabin was just great. And the I guess the special effects of the you know the all
I'm thinking it was
the
actually, man, no, you're probably right. They probably built it.
yeah, now it was in Canada though, so it could have been an old fishing. But I don't. Was there any water close to it? I don't remember if there's any water close to it.
I don't think you ever saw water in the cabin in the same frame.
Right.
So
And if you look at the water,
in the
when she
story,
falls
it's
in,
supposed to be a fishing cabin. So yeah,
right.
there's probably water really close.
But if you look at that water where she falls in with her fishing, that kind of looks. I mean, I've been to bayous in Louisiana. That's what it looked like. That's like, but that was kind
Yeah,
of odd.
really green, really.
Yeah, just in dark in the cedar stumps and stuff. Like, and what the hell would they be doing fishing at night? So that was the creepiness of it. But they're just two this wholesome guys, just in a bad
Come on,
place.
you know what fishing's all about.
What's that?
Drinking beer.
Drink. Oh, that's true, right? It's called fishing. It's not called catching, right? That's what
Yeah.
when Sean and I go fishing. I just sit there for. I was like, "Are we gonna catch anything, Dad?" It's called fishing, not catching.
Yeah, and that's some of those things where it's like, the audience has to like suspend their disbelief. Like I said, are you
Right,
going to
right,
go fishing at night? It makes no
right,
sense. Maybe they apparently they were out there a while
right.
because they had the last beer was there.
Okay.
They did kind of like
We
their
got
little comedy thing with fighting for the last beer, but they didn't really fight for it.
right.
He wanted the one guy to stand up for himself, so he decided to stand up for himself by I'm going to take this last beer. He's like, no.
Right. And who would go swimming in that murky ass water in the middle of the night? You know,
Drunken high teenagers will do anything. And it, it
I think I've
looked
been there, done
it
that.
looked green to us, but it was probably a lot clearer than it is, especially where they were, where they were fishing. That wasn't the greatest spot to fish.
No, no.
But they were kind of like underneath a tree and stuff, so that water was probably a little bit dirtier than
Right,
than where they were swimming. But
right. I think the cabin, the production design team, the theatrical, I mean, the side is really. I like the look of
yeah, those
the cabin.
cobwebs and stuff look fantastic. Usually when you get cobwebs and those other various kind of like dust and clumps of stuff, you look hard enough in these films, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see it's fake. I can
Yeah,
see where it's like they try to attach it here or something like that. It doesn't
yeah.
feel natural. It's like everything in
I,
here felt natural where it's like, man, this
right.
this cabin could have been like there and they just repurposed it,
But
which
wasn't
I
there
think
this
would be cheaper than actually building it. No.
right? When there what was the explosive part of it? They there's like matches or gasoline or something in there. I don't remember.
Yeah, and that's probably where you're right, where it's like it had to be built because I mean you wouldn't I mean you could buy a cabin for cheap and then
Burn
blow
it
it
down.
up. I mean, as long as you have a
Right,
permit, you can do whatever you want, right?
right.
I mean, look at what Arlington Road, that was an old movie. It
Hmm.
was kind of like the sequel to Tommy Lee Jones and Jeff Bridges movie. Was shot
Right.
in Pearland, right down the road from us.
Hmm.
They actually paid someone to use their house,
Hmm.
and the payment for it was like, we're going to remodel your house, basically.
Right.
So they went in there. It's like if they had caused any damage, whatever, because they're going to like remodel. They built them a porch. They built them like a patio in the
Right. Right.
back. It's like,
Right. Right.
sometimes it's cheaper to actually buy what you're working on, location, or renovate it, right?
Right. Fix it later. But
But you're
that's a good
right.
movie.
With the fire and stuff like that, it's like it for that much, you know, because you don't want to deal with like two types of insurance,
Right.
you know, or you don't want to be caused for like, hey man, you burned that thing up. Are you trying to collect insurance money, insurance fraud over here? So it's not like you can get that on your own property. So it's probably more like they built it, like you said.
Yeah. It really is really a good cabin. I liked it.
Oh yeah,
But,
the aesthetics
yeah.
nailed, the wrong turn cabin and the Evil Dead cabin. I'll have pictures up so you can see them. It's like, yeah, it's pretty much a mixed mash between both of them. And
Yeah.
the creepy factor, how they did a great job of how to make something feel unsafe, but for the most part, I never heard anyone getting hurt, so it's probably a safe, safe set. You probably have to watch yourself. No one leaned on that pole, right?
Right. Right. Right.
That pole is meant to like either break off or like snap halfway. So like
Right.
it's not bracing the house, not bracing the cabin together, but it's who knows what'll happen. Because it's
Right.
meant to be flawed. It's meant to be creepy. Everything is dirtied up. But it never felt like it was a hazard to the actors,
Right.
or the crew, and the lighting in the cabin was really good. I'm assuming they used a lot of natural lighting. When you have such a low budget, we talked about this before. What do you do? Most of the film was outside.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
There was like inside convenience store, which you're dealing with their lighting no matter what.
Mhm. Right.
Um, there was inside the cabin, and inside the cabin there was only basically two rooms, the main
Right.
room
In the bedroom.
and then
Yeah.
one bedroom,
Yeah.
and then the rest is outside, besides like one of the fight scenes at the end where there's a shed with tools, a lumber yard, kind of like sawmill type factory thing, and then like an upstairs kind of like office room. So it's like there's not a whole bunch
Right.
of interiors that you actually need to do massive production lighting on it.
Right.
Everything else was outside, and outside you maybe have one light that replicates some extra fill for sunlight, and the rest there's like silks and flags, to control your light,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
People
of
have
course
really
the
fun.
night scenes, the night swimming scenes, you probably have one large light, you have a generator, and that's replicating like the moonlight, right?
Right. Right.
It's on the water, bounce that light on the water. That water is going to reflect all that light. It's going to be a lot
Right.
more light than you probably need. So
Right. Sure.
being creative, using that money properly. If this film was made nowadays, 15 years later, right? Um, and it cost 20 something million to make, or 40 something million,
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't be
It
talking
never.
about
Yeah.
it the way it is. They probably
Right.
would. The
It didn't
charm
hold.
of the
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
amount of money and the playing with the stereotypes is probably what makes this film actually worth watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Here's a good. I highly recommend it. I give it five slices of pizza. Go back to our
Five teenagers. Five Dead Teenagers, right?
Yeah, Sean and Audrey liked it, and we had a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, and Maria liked it. So I think I was the only one that fell asleep.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you get to like like I said, the end where it's like they're encompassing the rest of like the story,
Right.
and you lose that kind of like comedy action that like just was happening. Like all the teenagers are dead, and you're dealing with like the last one, the final show
Right.
off, and that kind of like storyline's like, okay, yeah, now it's playing more of a, you're kind of flatlining a little bit,
Right. Right.
but the
Dad's
journey
house.
getting to that point was so great and so unique.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like worth
It was,
watching.
it was, yeah, I knew nothing about it. You just sit and I said, what? And the kids were all we just it was fun. It was a fun movie night.
And
We
how
didn't have
much you can
popcorn.
do with just a with a stare. We've talked about how much you can do with dialogue with two people on the screen with Silence of the Lambs. It's like how much
Right.
comedy and perspective playing you can do with just stares.
Hmm.
From the very beginning, the college kids are driving up, to the woods, and
Right.
the hillbillies pass them, and they got the beer in one
Right.
hand, and they just got their mouths open and staring at them. you know it's just creepy, right?
Yeah. Right.
It would be creepy to them. You can see how creepy it is, but
Right.
we've been in that car with the two lead actors, and we know they were just scoping out who who was passing them by, who they were passing by, or who almost hit them,
Right.
right? So it's like you can do so much with very little
Mhm.
if you know how to do it, if you have that
You're
creative
smart enough.
mind, if you really, really work on it, right?
Hmm.
And that's something that we are missing nowadays. Nowadays, we're just people are wanting to turn things out. Get me this. This has already been done. Just rewrite this,
Right.
and people aren't thinking creatively. They ain't thinking with restrictions. They aren't thinking what we can do with less. It's all about what can
Hmm.
we do with more and with CGI.
Right. They
I
want to
don't
get
think I
everybody
saw
paid.
CGI in this film. I'm sure
Yeah.
there was CGI, and that's the thing that notes good CGI is if you never see it.
You never see it, right? Yeah.
Mix it in with good special effects. All you need is a whole bunch of corn syrup and red dye, and your
Right.
special mix for blood. I mean, the most expensive thing, maybe the makeup on one of the teenagers. Um, you you don't even have to buy a mannequin for the legs that they pull out from
Oh,
the
you're right.
the thing. You can probably just get some clothes and some socks and shoes
Stay
and
with hay,
stuff
right?
that with some cotton or
Hey,
something.
right, right.
So work with what you got and work with what you don't got. And this movie
Right.
actually worked with both, and it did it so
Hmm.
well. Like you said,
Yeah.
I can't recommend it enough. If you love comedy and if you love horrors, this is a really good pick for you. But
Right.
if you just
It's
love a
definitely a sleeper.
film, go ahead.
I said definitely a sleeper.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you love a film that wants to play with your perspectives and has two different points of view possibly in the film, where you can like, let me put myself in this person's shoes. Let me put myself in this person's shoes, because you don't really have. Well, you have a villain, but the villain doesn't reveal himself till the end.
Hmm.
But that villain really is is not like your stereotypical villain. He's not like Jason Myers or Michael Myers or Jason or Freddy,
Right.
where it's like as an audience member, you don't really want to put yourself in their eyes, or you don't get an opportunity to put yourself in your eyes, or there's no point. They're just a psychopath. This film, you have this chance of putting your point of view in both people, in both
Hmm.
sides, and
Right.
that's what makes it so interesting and so unique, and it makes it worth, like you said, worth the watch.
Yeah.
All
It's,
right,
it's a good one.
we're going to wrap it up there. Make sure you check out Tucker and Dale versus Evil. You can
Yeah.
find it on Tubi, I know for sure,
Yeah.
right
Too.
now.
Yeah.
But I think it was on Hulu as well, or Paramount. It was on one of those. Great film. Like I said, I'm going to have to check out the DVD, see if I can't find that different version where
Right.
we
It'd be
did.
interesting to see. Yeah. I'd like to see that. Yeah.
And
I'm
maybe
gonna
we'll
want to
come
watch
back
Anson.
and we'll do a retrospect of it and see
Yeah.
which one's better, how could it have worked, because there is a way to actually make it work as a true slasher. But with actually everything that we have shot and seen in the film, if it's just shots taken out and focusing on them,
Right,
who knows if it actually like succeeds or not. But
right.
if it's actually got other scenes in there that or scenes that we've seen with the college kids that are prolonged and we didn't get to see that in the original film, it might actually like pull it off, right?
Yeah, be interesting to see. And we find us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, where else? iHeartRadio, Spotify,
YouTube, Apple
YouTube.
Podcast,
Yeah,
every
and
Friday, 6 p.m. Well,
6 p.m. We're
we,
gonna
we
get some
try to do
feature.
every Friday. Sometimes we can't help it and sometimes we miss, but
Right, life gets in the way.
yeah, life is life.
Right.
All right,
All right, my
David.
friend.
So
We'll see
next
you
week
guys
we'll have
next
a good
week.
movie for you next week. We'll try to make it a family movie this time.
Family
So
movie. Yeah.
even younger kids will be able to enjoy it.
Right.